Okay, good morning, everyone. We'll just give it a moment. We've got, I think, a few more people just coming in.
Yeah.
Hope it's not too cold where you are at the moment. It was pretty freezing for me driving into our office today. What about you, Laura?
It's a bit frosty. Me and Rob are going to have a fight over the temperature in the office today, because I'll be whacking it up and Rob will try to be putting it back down again.
That's not because I'm some kind of temperature Grinch or anything, but yeah, I do prefer it when it's a little chillier, it has to be said, instead of the tropical temperature which you.
It's an ongoing office argument. Is the temperature that we have here. That and cat people versus dog people. But,
Yes. Yeah.
Other than that, we get on very well.
Anyway, good morning to you all. So my name is Rob Creer and I am the Growth Hub manager, and this is
Laura Arlott, and I do all things skills at the Growth Hub and with business support as well.
And it's a real pleasure to have you guys with us today, where we're going to be talking about smoking and addiction, and as part of our Wellbeing in the Workplace programme. This programme is really around looking at improving health outcomes for residents and people and employees within Swindon and Wiltshire, but then the actual benefits which that will have on productivity, efficiency and general health within the workplace. So today's focus, as I said, is on smoking and addiction, something I have some experience of, because I have now been off the cigarettes for nearly 7 months, thanks to these little nicotine minis and an app which is keeping a track of all the days which I don't smoke. So it's been a really, yes, thanks, Geoff. So it's been really good. And yeah, I've definitely seen the benefits of it. I think the important thing about today's session is, you may not be smokers yourself, which is absolutely great, but it's the people who you might work with and how they can access support so that you can improve the outcomes within your workplaces for those who might still be smoking. I think there's going to be some advice and guidance as well into turning your premises into a smoke-free environment, and all of those sort of approaches. We've got two speakers today. I'm going to hand over to Laura, who's going to go into a little bit more detail about that. We do have a Q&A which I'll be monitoring. Laura's going to sort of like lead the rest of the session. So over to you, Laura.
Thank you very much, Rob, and congratulations on your 7 months. I didn't even realise it's been that long.
I know.
Very good. Okay, Rob is our shining example and beacon of what to do. Okay, so we are really excited and really grateful to have the speakers that we have with us today. And I've had the peek at the presentations and they are really, really great. So I'm looking forward to hearing them being delivered. And again, like Rob said, the session really is created in mind to be relevant in terms of support and guidance and signposting and ways of embedding that real practical support and help out there. So yeah, so first of all, our first speaker today is Sally Maynard-Smith, and Sally is a public health practitioner, and she works with Wiltshire Council, and she is the service lead for smoking cessation. And then so we'll hear from Sally first, and there will be opportunity for questions, and then we will be hearing from Geoff Mascall, who is lead nurse at Change Grow Live, and Geoff will be talking to us about addiction and how that affects the workplace as well, and ways of supporting people and employees to be able to talk about that and help them with it. Okay, so with that said, I would like to invite Sally to come on screen for us as our first speaker. And we see here how our tech works so beautifully. Look at that. Absolute pros. Thank you so much, Sally. So I will get your presentation up on screen, ready for you to speak to us. But while I'm doing that, would you just like to say hello to the attendees and just introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone, and on this really chilly morning. So my name is Sally Maynard-Smith. I'm a public health practitioner in public health at Wiltshire Council. And as Laura has already mentioned, I'm service lead for smoking cessation, and that is within our Wiltshire Health Improvement Hub. So I'm just going to, right, so Laura, we seem to have started partway through, so me go. If I take control and go back to the beginning, can you see this?
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah.
We're at the start.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Sally.
Brilliant. Okay, so I will say now this is going to be a real whistle-stop tour. I've got quite a lot of slides, but a lot of them have got information links on. Links and things like that are going to be shared afterwards, because there's a lot of information that you might want to have a look at later, moving forward. So just a quick look at what we're going to look at today. So we're just a little bit of data. We're not going to spend too long on that. Looking at the services that are available in Wiltshire and Swindon, some information on smoke-free policies, what training is available and support, what withdrawal from tobacco looks like, and then some resources that you might want to use or have a look at, and a little bit on e-cigarettes. Okay, so here is a sort of a snapshot of some Wiltshire data, and you can see that we are making progress, and compared to the southwestern England, particularly on our overall figure, you know, we're doing not badly. We separate out routine and manual workers because routine and manual workers generally have a higher smoking prevalence. And then the bottom lot of data, that is smoking at time of delivery. So that's for pregnant women. So this is Swindon data. So you can see Swindon's doing slightly better than us, particularly on their routine and manual workers. They're doing really well on that. Okay, so smoking is often part of daily routine for many workers, and it can make it quite difficult for them to break a habit and quit. So like many other health behaviours, there are inequalities in smoking, and in the UK, approximately 1 in 4 of those in routine and manual worker occupations smoke, and that is double that of for example, managerial and professional roles. So people who smoke also take an average of 2 or 3 days more sick leave per year. In combination with lost productivity from regular cigarette breaks, employees who smoke are estimated to cost the UK businesses 7.5 billion a year. So there are quite a lot of benefits to quitting smoking. Obviously, you know, there are ones that kind of will spring to your mind. So things like longer term risks of sort of cancer reduction and lung disease reduction. What a lot of people don't appreciate is how quickly people can start seeing benefits from stopping smoking. So, you know, for example, after 1 year, risk of heart attack halves compared to that of a smoker. Then as the years go by, the risks reduce. But also there is that the cost involved. So, you know, an average smoker can save around about £38 a week, and that's about £2,000 a year. The figures will vary slightly, some people more, some people less. You have to excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold at the moment, so my voice is a bit weird. Okay, so why would you want to support your staff to stop smoking? So it's going to reduce sickness absence, and reduce time that people will be taking during the day for those cigarette breaks. It is also shown in evidence that people who quit smoking, they're likely to have an improved mental well-being. So where people will often think it's the smoking that is helping them, actually, when they stop smoking, that well-being increases. And in particular, things like reduced depression and anxiety. So having a smoke-free environment can help protect everyone, smokers and non-smokers, from health problems and illness. And also there are other reductions in things like risks to fire and that kind of thing. So I've just got a couple of snapshots, and I don't know how well you can see these, but these are available on the ASH website. But you can see the kind of like the big headline really is on this productivity. So this is the one for Wiltshire. So 93.6 million pounds in productivity per year lost in Wiltshire. That is phenomenal. And then if we look at the one for Swindon, a similar 97.8 million, that's a phenomenal amount of money being lost in productivity. Okay, so across the country, we've got various smoke-free policies and ambitions. So within the NHS, there's the long-term plan, and that is for people admitted to hospital overnight. They are being provided with tobacco control treatment, so that's typically nicotine replacement products and support. Pregnant women and members of their household are also being provided with support in a similar way, and also the long-term users of specialist mental health services. So that is the plan. We're doing very well in our area with this. What the government have also recently announced, and this was towards the end of last year, the smoke-free generation. So that is the concept that I think it's the people who are 14 at the moment, they will never legally be allowed to smoke. So the plan is that the legal age of smoking is increased annually, so that, as I say, that the people who are about 14 at the moment will never legally be allowed to smoke. There are various other proposals. At the moment, these are all proposals. They're not actually in law yet, and they're being debated at the moment. So, other things around vaping, so to reduce vaping in young people, they're looking at restricting vape flavours, changing packaging, maybe making it a bit more bland and a bit more like cigarette packets, and also restricting the sale of disposable vapes. So the government are very committed to getting a smoke-free society, and there are a lot of initiatives on at the moment and funding being provided. So the ambition is to be smoke-free by 2030, and that means a smoking prevalence of less than 5%. So there's still quite a way to go on that, but we are moving in the right direction. So just a few questions for you to think about. Does your organisation have a smoking policy? Do you know what it is? Do you know what's in it? When was it last updated? How extensive is it? And does it include vaping? So there are some links here if you need help setting up a policy. And then this is just a list of some of the legislation around smoking. So you'll all be aware that there's been a ban on smoking in enclosed public places for considerable length of time, and that includes workplaces. And there are some additions to the Health Act So we've got these ones: premises enforcement, exemptions and vehicles, and vehicle operators and penalty notices. And you can get details of all of those on the government website. So if you've got staff who smoke and you want to know a bit more about helping them and support for them, there is the National Centre for Smoking Cessation and Training website. This is the website that is used for all smoking advisor training. And there are two aspects to this. One is the aspect for people to become stop smoking advisors. And there's a core assessment and other specialty modules. But also, without needing to be a stop smoking advisor, there are these different topics and short courses on very brief advice for a range of areas. So we've got pregnant women, secondhand smoke, smoking for homelessness services, and then just brief advice on smoking resources. So if you're interested, they're well worth having a look at. Okay, so I think it's important to know what withdrawal from tobacco looks like for you as employers and managers, because if you've got somebody who is giving up smoking, the likelihood that they will have some symptoms is quite high. Most people get some symptoms. Okay, some of them you won't notice, but some of them you might. So probably the most important is that change to mood and having trouble concentrating. So that's something that might impact their work. And during this time while they're giving up, giving them a bit of support in that area would be really beneficial. An increase in hunger and weight gain, that's also quite common. Urge to smoke, that can carry on, every now and again people might get that urge to smoke. And then things like waking up during the night, if you're not getting good sleep, that is going to impact on how you're feeling the next day. But also you're going to be more susceptible to things like mouth ulcers, respiratory tract infections, bleeding gums, those kind of things. Now, the good thing for this is that most withdrawal symptoms don't last longer than 4 weeks, and some only last a couple of weeks. So it's not something that we're talking, long term or even medium term. It's not going to be a 6-month thing. We're talking kind of a month. Some people might have it a little bit longer than that, but it's not a really long time. So hopefully they will get used to their smoke-free life, and these withdrawal symptoms will go away. Okay, so there are a number of useful places that you can go for additional support. So there's the NHS Better Health website, and that's got a lot of information on stopping smoking. There's also an app. I don't know whether it's the app that Rob's using, but you can track a variety of things on the app, and it will count how many days you haven't smoked, etc. So that can be downloaded for Apple and Android devices, and a lot of people find that really useful. So whatever other support they're getting from maybe a stop smoking service, having the app as well is really good. So from a business perspective as well, there is a campaign resource centre that has all of the sort of public health and NHS sort of campaigns on. There's things like posters. So this one on the right, what happens when you quit smoking, that's actually an A3 poster. You can order these resources from the campaign resource centre for free. Just have to register. And I mean they've just issued some new ones for the beginning of this year, to coincide with the big push for smoking. We've also got Wednesday the 13th of March is No Smoking Day. So you may well see more campaigns around that sort of time, and you could use that in your business possibly as a point to encourage people. We also have Stoptober in October. The idea of Stoptober is that people stop smoking for the month of October. So if you're going to do some push, you would need to be looking at it, sort of promoting it in September, ready for that sort of quit in Stoptober. So it's a bit like a, dry January, that kind of thing. Okay, so you might also want to consider how you approach people in your business. If you know that they're smoking, obviously you can do sort of general promotions, but if you actually want to talk to individuals, and you want some support in how to have those conversations, you might be interested in attending Making Every Contact Count MEC training. So MEC training, it's a 3-hour course, it's free, you can book it via Eventbrite. We in Wiltshire, we run courses, they do in Swindon as well. You can attend, somebody from Swindon can attend a Wiltshire one and vice versa. But when you're booking on Eventbrite, if you put in Making Every Contact Count, you'll also get them for other parts of the country. So just have a check on the fact that you've got the right area. But if you want any more information, then we've got some email addresses that you can get more information on. So that just helps you with how you would talk to somebody in a very short space of time, if you want to broach the subject of helping somebody quit smoking. So just going to cover a little bit about e-cigarettes, not a lot, but e-cigarettes obviously have been in the press quite a lot recently, and they've had some sort of positive and negative press, and I think the messages are getting a little bit muddled. So, for example, within our service, we use e-cigarettes as part of our offer to help people quit smoking. And they are very good and very effective as part of that offer for smokers. What we don't want people doing is taking up vaping if they don't smoke. And we certainly don't want children and young people vaping. So e-cigarettes are way, way, way safer than smoking, but they do carry a small risk. Okay, so they are really good for people who are smokers, as I say, who want to quit smoking, but they shouldn't be being used for anybody else. At the moment, there aren't any vapes that are approved by the MRHA, so they're not available on prescription, but a lot of local stop smoking services have funding for them. There's also a buy with confidence scheme. So if people are going to buy their own vapes, then it's a good idea to point them towards the buy with confidence scheme. So the vape retailers have been checked out by trading standards. So there's that extra confidence. Okay, so within Wiltshire, we have stopped smoking support in a variety of places. So we have some of our GP surgeries, though not all of them. The Wiltshire Health Improvement Hub, that's where I sit, and maternity services, secondary care, so that's the Salisbury Foundation Trust, prison, armed forces, and the Mental Health Trust. So the Wiltshire Health Improvement Hub, which is where I sit and which is part of public health, we have a team of health coaches who work with people to make lifestyle changes, and our main topics are smoking cessation, weight management, and emotional wellbeing. We work with Wiltshire residents and staff, either one-to-one or in groups, depending on the topic. So those are referral details, and so these will be shared afterwards. With smoking, we do one-to-one, and we have a group smoking offer as well, which currently is a virtual group. So it's run on Microsoft Teams. But we are happy to go into businesses to deliver a face-to-face smoking group for a particular organisation. And if that was of interest, then if you contact me, my contact details will be shared as well. So if you contact me about that, that would be the best port of call. So within Swindon, they also have a kind of a similar one. So there's contact details for their service. They also have a drop-in on Wednesdays where people can go without needing appointments, and they do a similar sort of support. So generally speaking, the support that the Stop Smoking services provide is up to 12 weeks. Our standard length of time is 12 weeks. Our group programs are actually 13 weeks because it's 12 weeks plus 1 week to get people started. And within what we offer, so they get behavioural support with a coach, but we also write prescription request letters to their GPs for nicotine replacement products, and we provide voucher codes for them to get e-cigarettes if they want them. There's also there are some stop smoking medications. I'm not going to go into that because they're in a bit of flux at the moment because of changes that are happening. So, you know, how can you help your employees stop smoking? So you can provide them with information on stop smoking support services. And as I say, if you're a business in Wiltshire and you wanted us to come in and deliver to staff, we could do that. If you are able to allow staff time to attend smoking cessation services, that's obviously going to be beneficial not just to them but to you. You know, I've shared already how much productivity is lost for people with smoking, whether it's, you know, time taken out or whether it's that extra illness. So it is beneficial to both parties to move towards this sort of smoke-free and getting people to quit. Nearly there. Okay, so if you want other support, we have there are a few links. As I say, links can be shared afterwards. The ones that are specific sort of smoking related, so Action on Smoking and Health, the ASH website, that's where the dashboards come from, but they have an awful lot of fact sheets and other information. Really good website. And then we've got the National Centre for Smoking Cessation and Training. Again, you know, that's also got wider than I've shared. So it does have those very brief advice, sort of little mini modules, but there's a lot of other information on there if you require it. So yeah, both really good websites. And that is me done.
Hi, thank you so much, Sally. Thank you. That was great. Me and Rob were listening along, and Rob was kind of nodding along, especially to your sort of the effects afterwards and stuff. Rob was like ticking them off. Yeah, I had that. Yeah, I had that. And we were talking about that. We were also like, we thought some of that information and statistics is just mind-boggling, isn't it? Like the numbers, the money, like you said, in a cost of living crisis as we are as well, to think that you could have that extra if you were to get rid of that sort of harmful habit. But again, with addiction, and I'm sure Geoff will say as well, it's not always that easy to just stop just because you know that that's what you should do, or you know, it doesn't mean that it's easy, and there's so much of that around it that's making you sort of do that, and so it's about accessing that support and feeling comfortable to say that you need some help with it.
I mean, I think one thing I would I would say just quickly with, we work with behaviour change on a range of topics, and somebody's head has to be in the right headspace to be ready to do it. So you can provide a lot of information, but you can't get to that point. You can't make someone, but you can encourage them in the right direction. And another thing that I would say is that most people have multiple attempts at quitting smoking, and some people have up to about, and this sounds, you'll think you'll gasp at this, up to 30 attempts at stopping smoking. Yeah, and it obviously depends on how long you smoked, why you smoke, the environment that you're with, but yeah, but hopefully by providing information and accessibility, it will make people think, oh, maybe this is the right time for me. But if they attempt it and it doesn't work, they can always come back into our service. Our service is open. You can come back again next time you feel ready. So it's not you try it once, it doesn't work, give up. And the services are still there for that support. And if businesses can be supportive of people stopping smoking, I think that would also help.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's a really interesting point, actually, about the amount of times that people attempt to quit. I used to say that I would give up in between cigarettes, as my sort of a quit approach. And I know that headspace is another right thing, and identifying what your triggers are whenever you do quit. So it took a long time for me to work out what was driving those, and yeah, it's going to be different for everyone. I mean, a couple of sort of points which I was looking at there, which is I think worth touching on, is for those who are on the call, definitely go and have a look. So have you got that smoking policy in place? Is it being enforced? Often it's one of those policies which is sort of a bit of lip service is paid to it. It's written down at one point, someone puts it in place. You might take a couple of weeks of enforcing it, but then the smoking area which you've designated, or the fact that you made the site non-smoking or whatever, there's a bit of creep, and before you know it, it's just in the background and in the noise. So I think that's a really important point Sally made there. Actually, go and have a look at your smoking policy, refresh it, update it, make sure that your people are aware of it as well, and also visitors is another one to look at there, to make sure that they are they're okay with what's actually going on with that. Sally, I had one question for you which came up around so young people and vaping. Has there been an increase in or has there been any correlation seen between young people and vaping moving on to cigarettes?
So some of the data is a bit they're trying to gather a bit more data at the moment. It's a bit it's a movable feast, I think, is how I'd put it. Getting that information, it's harder to get that kind of information from young people, because they're having to admit to something that actually they shouldn't actually be doing. It's actually illegal for young people to be doing this. But the simple answer at the moment is no. So a lot of young people are trying vaping, but as a separate thing to smoking.
Right.
And one of the reasons why they're looking at getting rid of some of those flavors and some of the colors. So if you think about disposable vapes, they come in a variety of really nice colors, really nice sounding flavors, and that kind of thing. And they're kind of a bit like a fashion accessory for some people.
Yeah.
But that is distinct from smoking. But they're not. It's not without risk. And I know when we speak to respiratory consultants and things like that, they do see young people who are having problems, or having asthma, or asthma is being made worse, and things like that. So it's not a good thing for young people to be doing. And again, it's not a good thing for people who don't smoke, adults who don't smoke, to to take up vaping, because it's not without risk. It's just a lot less risky than smoking.
Yeah, it's just that that sort of risk as well of being dependent on something that you know that you weren't before, and that's just, it's not a very nice thought, is it, to kind of be addicted to something. So I think that's really good news to hear that they're not going to be so fancy looking and smelling and stuff. And I know that's a fit when I when I sort of talk to parents, and they say, you know, back in the day, with when you were a kid, and if you come in the house that's sort of smelling like fags, then your mum and dad they'd be straight on the case. But now you're going to come in a plume of blueberry. It's a bit harder for parents of teenagers, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is really interesting. It really is, and it is some of that information you gave us is really shocking. And I think and the amount of times that people can quit. So it's sort of the takeaway is don't give up on giving up, I guess.
Yeah, oh yes, yeah. And actually, if you've tried to quit before, use that as information to help your next quit attempt, so you know what was difficult, so modify things for your next quit attempt. So trying to give up and not succeeding is valuable information for the time that you do succeed.
Don't see it as a failure. It's interesting you said that, Sally, because that's another thing Rob said while we were listening to you, because Rob's got these nicotine mint things.
Nicotine minis.
And he was saying this is working really well for him this time, and he was saying vapes didn't work well for him last time. So it's like you're saying, it's giving yourself a better success story by learning what works well for you. And I'm sure, like, instead of seeing it as a failure, each quit attempt is getting you closer, and it's at least a bit of respite from that unhealthy behavior for a while, and seeing that information about those positive changes that can be made in such a short amount of time. It's at least got to be doing some good.
I mean, even so that poster that I mentioned, that A3 poster, and it's got the different sort of time frames. You know, it actually starts at 20 minutes. That's the first one. You know, so so even if you can spread out your cigarettes, that will give you, you know, small benefits. I mean, one thing I would actually say that I didn't mention before is, you know, some people will find that they get a worse cough, and they will say, I'm going back to smoking because basically my cough is worse not smoking. But that's a short-term thing. That, you know, your lungs have got all that tar that they need to clear. Actually, I've got a little prop here that's a
Ew.
That's a nice little
full of tar. So that's 20 cigarettes a day, and that's what will build up in your lungs in 2 months at 20 cigarettes a day. So, you know, if you think about, you know, stopping smoking, your lungs have got to get rid of all of that gunk. So that's why you'll get that cough. It's not that it's making you worse, it's getting rid of all of that.
I think that's a better out than in situation, if you ask me.
Some brilliant stuff, Sally. I think it's some real interesting salient points here. So looking at the people on the call, if you've got any questions, drop them in the chat. Sally's here for the rest of the session as well when we're with Geoff, and we can continue on any discussions towards the end after Geoff's presentation. But a couple of real salient points here. Look at the smoking policy in your business. Use those free resources. Don't when considering, is it important for my business? Clearly, the productivity of cigarette breaks, absence, general anxiety and depression which comes from it, or all those sort of things which can impact an employee's well-being in work. To me, it becomes a no-brainer for you to be an employer, or a line manager or a HR consultant or person who can take this information and really help make that difference within businesses. So I think it's It's really important, and yeah, I'm testament that actually once you get past the first couple of weeks, you do see the benefits and you do see things improving. So thank you very much, Sally. Just for a couple of points which we should have mentioned at the beginning. Firstly, this is being recorded as well, so we'll make sure that a copy of this is put out to everyone who's on the call if they want to catch up with it, or even share it with their teams or their colleagues. Then that's absolutely fine as well. And Laura will be putting together the resource pack, which will be going out to yourselves as well. So thank you, Sally. So very best to introduce Geoff now.
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Sally. So yeah, so speaking next for us is Geoff. Here he comes. Friendly face. Hi, Geoff. And yeah, we're really honoured to have Geoff here as well. Geoff is lead nurse at Change Grow Live, which is a charity that is doing that is operating in the Swindon and Wiltshire area and doing some really incredible work. So Geoff, whilst I get your presentation up and running, would you like to sort of say hello and a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Geoff Mascall. As you just heard, I'm lead nurse with Change Grow Live. I'm also a non-medical prescriber, so I've been working clinically in addictions for about the last 25 years, which makes me feel very old, but hey, I've earned these white stripes. Change Grow Live is actually a national charity. We hold a lot of contracts across England and Wales to support individuals with their substance use disorders. So that might well be drugs, alcohol. We also provide some of the stop smoking services as well. So yeah, if people have got employees who require support, I've got links at the end of my presentation, but we're the guys to come to. So I'm going to press the take control button because I was instructed to do so. Right. Is that showing for everybody?
That should be. Yeah, we can see that.
Good for us. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I was just going to say as well, people feel free to put in the chat any questions that you have, but also comments, observations, and if comfortable, share your own experiences as well. That's up to you. Thank you, Geoff.
Thank you. All right then, without further ado, that's me. So want today to look at what does addiction look like, what causes addiction, and how can I be supportive? So I'm sure all of you as employers, it's important to be supporting your employees to be as productive and as the most that they can be. So what does addiction look like? So it could be excessive alcohol consumption, it could be excessive drug use, gaming and gambling addiction. It's kind of gone off the boil now, but that was a very big thing a couple of years back. Porn addiction, phone addiction, and codependent relationships. And not many people recognize that some of those later ones are actually in themselves addictive. Just to put in context, a lot of the online games available now, a lot of phone apps are all designed to stimulate a dopamine response, which is one of the chemicals, one of the brain neurotransmitters, which is involved with actually getting people addicted. In terms of what is excessive alcohol consumption, the government drinking limit is 14 units per week. It's actually the same for men and women now. And that's considered to be a maximum drinking level before things start seeing excessive risk coming in. It's interesting for me, I sat in a conference a few years back now, full of addiction professionals, doctors, nurses, and the amount of alcohol you can consume in 1 year before you start to see some of the risks starting to escalate is actually 100 mils of wine. So it's about a third of a glass of wine per year before you start to see some of the risks increasing. In terms of drug use, there are a lot of people that use drugs recreationally at a weekend, and it does not impact their health particularly. However, I'm sure when it comes to the workplace, if people have been hard partying all weekend, you're going to be seeing some of those impacts further down the line. So In terms of the way that you would identify if someone has a problem with addiction, and I'm deliberately including here not just substances, I'm talking about addictions generally. They may well have hangover the day after. Some drugs will take several days that someone will feel pretty rough once they stop using them. You're probably going to see higher sickness rates and higher absence rates overall. You're going to be seeing higher accident rates. And when we're looking at the litigious nature of the culture nowadays, these things are going to effectively cost you money. The individual may appear tired or lethargic during the work time. Their performance may take a dip. It's interesting for me that when you look at cocaine use in the workplace, City of London, you see very high levels of cocaine use because people believe it helps them function more and improves their performance when at work. You might see someone might be particularly anxious or suffer with depression as well. They may appear chaotic in the workplace, or their approach to work may appear to be more chaotic. They may struggle to meet their deadlines. The other identifiers may be that someone's smelling of the particular drug or alcohol that they're using. A lot of people think that if they cover themselves with perfume or drink or eat lots of breath mints, that that's going to cover some of the smell from their alcohol use or from their drug use. The reality is when people are consuming alcohol, it's not just given away by the smell on their breath. You actually process the alcohol and it comes out through your skin and your sweat. So quite often people will have quite a strong smell of alcohol through that method as well. People may be experiencing frequent life dramas. I'm sure we've all met that employee over the years who there is always that air of chaos going on in their personal life. That may well be indicative that there is a addiction problem in the background. And they may have difficulty managing their emotions within the workplace. They may be particularly easily upset. They may actually be completely withdrawn and shut down, so they're not engaging emotionally with people. So moving beyond what does addiction look like? For me, I was really interested in terms of what causes addiction. And throughout the course of my career, I've actually seen a number of different attempts to answer that question, what causes addiction. I think we're probably closer now than we've ever been. I spent the first part of my career working very much to the medical model, and the idea is that drug use causes addiction. So if I take heroin for 28 days, at the end of that time, I'm going to become physically dependent to heroin. And that was the medical thinking for a very long time. There is still a significant proportion of the medical world that still believes that model. So if we look at high quality heroin, diamorphine, it's pharmaceutical grade heroin, much better than anything you buy on the streets. Lots and lots of people are given diamorphine every day of the week. If we look at orthopedics, when people are having hip operations, having their hips replaced, pretty much all of them will be given diamorphine for similar periods of time. And this is where the medical knowledge started to be tested, and an increasing number of medical professionals are starting to question, hold on, if giving people drugs makes them into an addict, why isn't my granny an addict when she has her hip replaced? So there was a series of experiments that went on, and scientists being scientists, God bless them, they know that rats love drugs. You put drugs and rats together, predominantly rats will enjoy the drugs. So the first set of experiments, they put rats in cages. They gave them 2 water bottles. One water bottle contained just water. The other water bottle was laced with heroin. And fairly consistently, you would see that the vast majority of rats would opt to use the drugged water, and most of them would use it excessively. Most of them would use it to a point of overdose and death, which is pretty scary for most of us. And then along came a guy called Professor Alexander. He said, there's a problem with your experiment. It doesn't relate to human beings. What we need to do is look at rats in a more natural environment. And this is where he created the experiment, which has come to be known as Rat Park. So in Rat Park, instead of having individual rats in individual cages, we had a big enclosure where rats had balls to play with, they had tunnels to climb through, they had all the things that rats around town would need, including the opportunity to have lots of other rats, rat relationships, rat sex, all the stuff that a rat's going to find enjoyable. They then put in the two water bottles, regular water and water laced with heroin. And what was interesting is that the rats pretty much ignored the drugged water. None of them used it compulsively, and none of them overdosed and died with that water. So from that, we were saying, okay, it's possibly about the cage, possibly about the rat. How can we look at that in a human experiment? Now, around the same time, we were lucky enough that we had the Vietnam War, and I say lucky from a scientific perspective. American servicemen in Vietnam, they could be killed at any time. They would be going out on patrol and having to kill other people on a regular basis. All of that makes for fairly unhappy human beings. When they looked at the rate of heroin use, about 20% of American servicemen were using heroin on a regular basis. So the expectation is that you would have 20% of those servicemen coming back to the US and having a crisis with the number of people who are using heroin and therefore will be addicts when they come back. The interesting thing is that the vast majority of those people, and I've looked at the numbers and it's up in the 90s, came back to America, integrated back with their families, with their loved ones, didn't experience opiate withdrawal, which is what we would expect, and continued their life as normal. So from that, we know that things are different with addiction. It's not about the drug, it's about the cage. So when we look at addiction cause, it's the loss of healthy connection with human beings and an attempt to self-regulate pain. And that could be psychological pain, that could be physical pain. So the belief is that those people who came back from the Vietnam War and continued using drugs, you're probably seeing significant periods of PTSD for those individuals, managing some of that trauma that they've brought with them. What we can definitively say is that addiction is not a moral failing, and it is not a character flaw of the individual. So the idea that we have an addictive personality doesn't exist. There's no such thing. What there is someone who, at some point, normally in their teenage years, loses a connection with a loved one, has a means to manage their pain, and attaches to the drug rather than, or to any of the addiction, rather than to healthy human connections. And Gabor Mate has studied this a lot. He's written a lot about it. If anybody's interested, he has a fantastic book called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. He's also got lots of stuff available on YouTube and podcasts and things as well. And he very succinctly says, ask not why the addict, ask why the pain. And this is targeted predominantly at people working in therapies. So don't worry about the addiction itself. Look at the individual, ask about the pain, understand the pain, help them understand the pain, and then you might be able to find a way forward from there. So moving on, how can we be supportive? Be sensitive to the individual's needs. So if it's an employee, just recognise that they're going through a hard time and they may well need support to move beyond that. Look at having the open and frank conversation about wanting to support that person and help them to engage with the specialist support. In one of my previous careers, I was lucky enough to work in the rehab industry, and I was shocked by the number of big private companies who would pay for their individual to go through the rehab process so that they could continue being productive to the company. But genuinely be supportive of that individual, genuinely inquire about their well-being. Support comes in many forms, so it could be CGL, it could be any of the statutory providers of addiction support. It might be fellowship meetings, so something like Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm sure most of you have seen references to that in films. It always makes me cringe when I see them, when the meeting's done badly or presented badly in the media. The reality is fellowship meetings are like Chinese takeaways. You move to a new area, you want to eat a lot of Chinese takeaways before you find the one that you actually like. And even then, you can get a bad takeaway if they've got a different chef on that night. Fellowship meetings are exactly the same. You can find a meeting that you enjoy, and you can still have a bad evening with it. It may be that that doesn't work for anyone at all. There's many private therapists out there, talking therapists, counsellors by another term, specialise in addiction. They can really help the individual. Quite often, the work they're doing isn't directed at the addiction, it's actually directed at the pain, which is where places like Mind and some of the mental health charities come in, that actually by helping the individual with their pain, you can certainly help them move forward from the need to manage that pain. Look, does the individual need time off to attend their appointments? Most services are open office hours only. So it may be that you need to look at changes to work patterns or supporting someone to be attending appointments with that medical professional. And consider reasonable adjustments to people's duties during that time when they're having a struggle. Maybe they need to work at home a few days a week to help balance out some of that pain. Maybe they need to be in the office more during that time. It really is about working on an individual basis and creating those individualized solutions. So that's me. Any questions from you guys would be greatly appreciated. And this final slide is just how to refer across to us. So we will take online referrals. You can just telephone us. The person can turn up to see us individually as well. We have an open referral scheme, so literally anybody can refer anybody else to us. We offer drop-in triage and assessments, so literally someone can come along in the morning and they'll be seen that same day and start their journey with us. So thank you very much. A couple of clicks, we should be bringing Laura back online. There we go, it's working.
Great, this tech, isn't it? Geoff, that was fantastic, honestly, really, really brilliant. Thank you so much for that. It was so interesting. And I think that's the first time I've actually listened to a webinar where someone said rat sex. And rats love drugs. I'm going to get a t-shirt with that on. Yeah, it was so fascinating. And the point that you came to, that it, you know, it isn't about the addiction. It's about the circumstance that someone is, and maybe feeling hopeless or not able to function without something that is ultimately quite destructive. So it's all about that kind of intervention of trying to assist someone and help them before, you know, to get them off that path of basically self-harm. That was really poignant to me as well. I have a friend who struggles with addiction, and we've sort of supported him into rehab and stuff, and it can be really difficult for the people around someone as well to sort of take that on. And there isn't an easy fix, like you say. Like there's underlying issues that are going on, and they can be harder to get to than actually just talking about the addiction.
And there is support out there
Yeah.
for the friends and families of those.
Yeah,
addiction.
yeah,
So we have
employees.
Al-Anon, Alateen. There's lots of stuff out there. Because if the individual is dealing with their addictions, their loved ones don't need to deal with the overspill that affects them.
Yeah, because they have to concentrate, you know, on getting themselves better, and sometimes, you know, they can't also have the capacity to see how much that is taking from the people around them that are supporting them. And it's the same in the workplace as well. So this can happen. And that friend of mine, his workplace has been amazing, actually. Just as an example, he works at Amazon, and they've been really, really good. So they kind of understood the fact that when he was very ill, because it is an illness, and he was very, very poorly for a while and had to go into rehab and such, they sort of allowed it, sort of, you know, took into account all of his holiday and kind of supported that he would need some time off to get better. And since then he's actually been promoted, has travelled to train other new emerging members of staff and new places and stuff. So it's like you said about those businesses that are actually supporting with rehab costs, that the actual payback, the value of that employee, and then how loyal and grateful they feel to that organisation as well. I think it is another thing. But we were thinking. We've got one in the chat.
Yeah, so Paula Nunnery has popped her hand up a second ago for a question. Paula, do you want to come on screen and say and ask a question? I'll just sort your camera.
Trying to carry on talking whilst getting her on camera.
Sure, if that's
Hi, hello everybody.
Hi,
Paula here from Live Well in Swindon Borough Council. Thank you so much for all the presentations this morning, and Geoff, that was fantastically interesting for me, because I'd never heard that theory that there's no such thing as an addictive personality, and that's really interesting. I'm going to go and look at Gable Mate. It was just following on from what Laura said about support for friends and family members of the addict. I kind of missed the bit where you said where we can signpost them, or what support is available, please.
So Al-Anon is the 12-step fellowship meeting approach to supporting those individuals. Or we've got Alateen, which is for the teenagers requiring that support. They would just be the starting point, I think, in terms of fellowship meetings. But ultimately, any support around the individual is useful. So any of the young people's support charities, they would be very aware of the effects of addiction upon that young person, or upon the rest of the family group.
Okay, so can I just confirm that if you're a partner or a child of somebody, then you and they're struggling with some sort of addiction, you yourself could get support from Al-Anon, or
Yes.
Right? Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks.
You're welcome, Paula. Thank you.
We've got another question here from Lindsay. How do we support employees when we have a no alcohol and drugs policy as we work with pyro? So pyro being pyrotechnics.
Wow.
I suspect this also would then apply to other businesses such as say hauliers or ones where you're using heavy machinery. Quite often those sort of policies are in place as well. So yeah, it's a very interesting point.
Yeah.
If you've got a policy in place and you find someone in that situation, Geoff, what would you feel would be some good steps to take in that case?
I would say, first of all, I would imagine most no drink, no drug use policies refer exclusively to substances such as alcohol and illicit drugs. I'm sure you've got a smoking policy if you're working with pyros, however many meters away from the building at any given time. I'd imagine you've probably also got a please don't use your phone while you're playing with fireworks policy. I would say if that policy only covers during work time, sit down and have the conversation with the individual. Obviously, that's a disciplinary issue. What do we do before we get to that disciplinary point? Most likely, that individual is keeping by the policy and only using in their own time. And that's where it becomes a lot more difficult to manage with a policy. It's more about supporting individuals in the workplace by recognizing that they're individuals in the real world. So for me, it would be, yes, you have the you shall not use whilst in work policy, but you will probably see some of the hangovers coming from someone's previous use from the day before, the night before. When you bear in mind alcohol, average male with the average liver loses 1 unit an hour, which is great if they're sticking to the 14 units per week. So 2 hours after that day's drinking, they've cleared the alcohol. But if we look at someone who has 2 bottles of wine with dinner, yeah, that's going to be 20 hours to actually lose that much alcohol. So they will be affected by the alcohol the following day.
Very interesting. Lindsay, did you want to come on and say anything further? I can unmute you or... No? No. Okay, thank you, Lindsay. That's a very good question, and yeah, it does also, I suppose, show the breadth of this discussion which we're having here. We're not always just looking at say some recreational use, which is then just that impacting performance outside of that, but then what is the impact after they've finished that recreational use and how that can impact an employee and their efficiency and safety within the workplace after that. You mentioned, Geoff, that in London, yeah, there's prevalence of cocaine use because people feel that it speeds them up, improves their concentration, improves their abilities. What would you say are sort of like some of the, obviously looking at Swindon and Wiltshire, slightly different environment to the City of London. What are the main prevalent sort of addiction types that you see for an area such as this?
Alcohol will always score highest. It's the legal addiction which most people will indulge in, or most adults will indulge in. Although we are now seeing a big shift from young people drinking to young people not drinking. Cocaine remains pretty high as well, especially in the recreational use. It's become very much normalised in the young people attending clubs and pubs to be mixing the alcohol with the cocaine. Interestingly, it's a combination that creates something called coke-ethylene, which is a very dangerous chemical, but boosts the what are considered the positive effects of both substances. So you get more high on your cocaine, and you get more of a buzz from the alcohol. We do have a significant number of people who are using heroin, crack cocaine locally. And also some of the pregabalin, some of the prescribed opiates, some of the prescribed benzodiazepines, although thankfully in the Swindon area, we've got some very good GPs, and the benzodiazepine use coming from a GP's prescribing pad isn't excessive. For the workplace, I think you're going to be seeing a lot of cannabis use. There's a lot of people who consider cannabis not to be a damaging drug. It's one of those drugs where it's a big contentious issue in the medical field as well, because now we're starting to see cannabis for medicinal use. And it's one of the problems when we have prohibition is that we're not able to look at the chemicals and what we can do to get the most from each of those chemicals, how to use them medicinally, how to use them actually in drug testing. That leads to a reduction in the amount of research we're able to do. So we're not able to identify which parts of the chemical, or not easily able to identify in the UK, which parts of the chemical people are actually finding useful for their individual conditions. So cannabis use tends to strike quite high for people who maybe have been using it recreationally for a long time. Bearing in mind, cannabis is quite often used in a joint alongside tobacco. So linking back to Sally's talk there as well, so we've got some of those harms there. A lot of people don't feel that cannabis has any negative consequences with it. I would urge anybody of my generation who ever read the back of the Cypress Hill album, it's absolute nonsense. Cannabis is actually more carcinogenic than tobacco. So there is a cultural thing around the cannabis use recreationally. Spice less so, that tends to be more just in the prison populations nowadays. But yeah, I would say drug-wise, cannabis would probably be scoring up there pretty high. Unfortunately, these things, if you can see it on screen there, your phone, they are hugely addictive. And I'm sure if you look around the office, in any office space nowadays, there's a lot of people regularly checking their phone, spending a lot of time on their phone when they should be working. And as I say, the apps are built to make people addicted to them. Just to put in context, if you go into a rehab or detox unit, you spend the first 2 weeks with very limited access to your telephones. It would only be for like an hour or two at the start or end of each day. And there's a reason behind that, and that's because your phone is so addictive, and we're trying to break that addiction cycle. About 2 years ago, I thought I'd put myself on a digital detox. I'm lucky I've got a little place in Hungary up in the forest where I can literally get away from everything. And so I did 2 weeks without my phone. And yeah, it wasn't really any big issue. I don't consider myself to have any big phone addiction issues. When I came back, I was talking to my partner on the phone when I was driving the car, and her WhatsApp alert went off. And I felt that little rush of dopamine, that little bit of love. Oh my God, somebody loves me, come through just through hearing that tone. And I'm sure all of us can remember once upon a time when we first had that first love experience, or when you're with that new person and they ring you and we see them and you get that little rush of dopamine going on. And to have that experience from a device, it wasn't even my device, it was just a noise that came through. Elicits that big Pavlovian response. I think it's really important for us to recognize how powerful some of these things are. So alongside your no smoking, no drinking policy, it may be worth thinking about an acceptable phone use policy within the office as well to support people in that way.
That's a really amazing point there, Geoff. Laura and I were just talking.
Laura looks a bit nervous already.
Yeah, that's my manager. Don't put ideas in his head, Geoff.
No, on a serious note, one of my New Year's resolutions is I'd found myself doom scrolling quite heavily, just before bed and whatever, just going through Facebook, which is essentially now just a load of adverts. It's not actually any information from your friends, really. And so I've just gone and deleted a load of apps off my phone to try and get control of it. But what I also signed up for something which the Guardian are running at the moment, which is the Reclaim Your Brain program, which they've got going, which gives you, and you might be able to see this, you might not, but it gives you a really good screensaver which you can put on your phone, and it tells you how many how many hours a day it would look as a meter. So the meter says the reclaim your brain meter. How many days are you spending on your phone? 1 hour a day equates to 15 days a year. 2 hours a day, 30 days a year, and it goes up from there. And it's just really useful. I found it really, because I've gone to grab my phone a couple of times, and that's been the first thing I've seen, and I've gone, nah, I'm putting that down for a bit, I think. So yeah, it is something which is it's a very good point, how it's easy to get dragged into it. I had another question actually, Geoff, just around cocaine use, because I was reading an article the other day. Unfortunately, as my generation, I'm a Gen X. I hit my sort of partying teens in the mid 90s, when it became very acceptable in those times to be partying with drugs. But the article is saying that there's a lot of people now hitting their mid 40s, 50s, who are they've just continued it. It's become the norm, and they see it in the same way alcohol is seen as a norm, that you go to a friend's dinner party, you do some coke, you have some wine, that kind of thing. But the health impacts of those on those individuals is now leading to a higher prevalence of heart attacks and so forth because of that sort of use. Do you have anything you can sort of like add to that, maybe? Because I think it's a good area to look at, that we always think drug use equals young people, drug use equals people on lower incomes, and that's not the case.
Yeah, it's really interesting that's appearing in the Guardian. So yeah, predominantly with cocaine, you're looking at the effect of the drug is mostly going to be cardiac issues. So you're looking at early heart attacks, early dementias, and that sort of thing. So the venous access issues. The other part of the problem with cocaine use, as you say, you go to a dinner party and you snort a couple of lines, you're looking at the route of administration becoming an issue as well. I think we're all well aware of Daniela Westbrook, God bless her, losing a septum. That isn't an abnormal thing. Here at CGL, we employ a lot of people who are in recovery from their own addictions. And I've come across many people who have what we call a deviated septum. So the bit in the middle of your nose inside actually gets burnt through cocaine use, which is pretty grim to think about. But unfortunately, that is the reality of it. And you'd also be seeing other sort of respiratory issues if someone's smoking the cocaine, or vein damage if someone's injecting it.
Just goes to show the control that it can start to have over you when you're literally sort of seeing your face fall apart, and yet you still can't stop. And that just goes to show how much support we need to give people as well, and what they might need. I think maybe to round it off, and as a last point, I was going to ask Geoff if you could give advice to people on the call, and for where this is going to go further, especially to business leaders, employers, and such in supporting their employees. If there is a case where they might see indicators of perhaps that something is affecting someone, and they're starting to see that come into the workplace, how would you recommend someone sort of broach the subject? Because it is tricky to do, and also I guess I know we talked about policies being around, and in certain workplaces they're going to be even more important than others, and that might actually become a bit of a barrier of, like you said, some people, they're not doing it at work, it's affecting them outside of work, and that might be a barrier to them feeling like they can talk about it. And I would personally think a big thing in recovery is being able to talk about it. And like I said with my friend, that's the point where he was able to be honest with his employers and had a really supportive manager and could actually talk about how they could support him. It was just night and day with his recovery as well. It was such a anxiety for him that he might lose his job, and they would think a certain way of him, and everything else. So yeah, just a bit about how to broach someone and to have a conversation.
I think for me, the starting point is genuinely having that concern for someone, creating the environment within the office that it's okay to have a problem. So as leaders, we don't come to work and we pretend that everything is absolutely perfect and as it should be in our lives. We're real people having real experiences. So if we start modeling that, if we start modeling to our employees that it's okay not to be okay, and then we build the culture around that for me is a really good starting point. Then obviously you have your one-to-ones. One thing which I always make sure I do in any of my one-to-ones, in fact, in a lot of my meetings, a lot of my colleagues think I'm a bit weird for it, is I do a check-in. How are you feeling today? But actually genuinely asking and genuinely interested in the response to that. Us Brits are great for asking, how are you doing today? And getting the answer, oh, I'm fine. And that's it, end of conversation. Literally anybody tells me they're fine, I'm starting to ask more questions. I won't say what the acronym of FINE stands for in fellowship meetings, certainly not in a recording, certainly not in a public space. Let's just say it's messed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. There you go, you can breathe, Rob. So yeah, people quite often will put on that front and it's very obvious that there's something going on behind it. If you create the culture where it's okay to come forward and ask for support, and give a very matter-of-fact nature to asking the questions. How are you doing? What's going on for you? I'm really concerned about what's going on for you. And you've done all that work beforehand, so it's in the culture, it does become easier. If you don't feel able to have that conversation, have you got a staff support program that you can maybe refer someone to? It may be just as straightforward as, I'm recognising that there's some issues going on for you. Here's a staff support program number if you need it. Every organisation is going to have their own individual balance on that. But yeah, I would say definitely start with that culture. Start with you as the leader of that culture. Be the change you want to see in the world. There you go. Nice little meme to finish off on there.
Thank you, Geoff.
Yeah.
We've got one more question here from Guy Sharp. If anyone else has got any questions for either Geoff or Sally, please drop them in the chat now, before we sort of like move into the final section. Guy is asking, you mentioned reasonable adjustments during your presentation. What might these look like in the workplace for addiction? So great question there, Guy.
It really does depend on the individual and what their adjustment needs to be. It may be that someone is looking at starting at a different time of day or finishing at a different time of day. It may be they need time off to deal with childcare issues. If, let's say, for example, they've got a teenager who's not going to school and that's what's really pushing their buttons and that's what's causing them to need to medicate with alcohol or whatever it might be there. But I would say have the adjustments as unique as the individual is. Really do look at the needs for that person. Obviously, you need to balance that against the needs of the business. But yeah, it's about that individualized support. So be creative and ask the individual as well for some of their creative solutions. It's not one of those pull it off the shelf kind of things you can do, really.
I used to support apprentices, and I had an apprentice who really suffered with social anxiety, really severe social anxiety, and reasonable adjustment. Because I think when people hear reasonable adjustment, they think that's big. It's too big. It's going to disrupt everything. Actually, you can do really small things that that change everything for one person. So say with this apprentice, so after talking to her, and again it was all about talking and hearing what it was that was really bothering her, all we did was make it that she would have an admin day on Monday and not be on the phone. What was freaking her out was the thought on Sunday evening of having to be on the phone, and actually being on the phones wasn't that bad. It was more the thought of it, and it was really getting to her, and she kept having sickness and absences on Monday that then was affecting the rest of her work, and then she'd have a whole week off because she was off Monday, and it was snowballing like mad. So because of that intervention and because of that conversation, just said, should we try not putting you on the phone on first thing on a Monday? It didn't affect the business at all, and she was fine after that. It is amazing what you can do. But yeah, it came from a conversation and really trying to get down to the root and trying something different before you sort of write someone off as having a problem, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, we've got no further questions at the moment. So, Geoff, thank you very much. Sally, do you want to pop on a second and join us?
Take a bow.
Well? Take a bow. Yes, yes. So, Sally, thank you as well for all of your information on how we can support people with smoking and how we can help improve health outcomes from smoking cessation in the workplace. Guy just popped his hand up and it went down again, so I'm not sure if Guy is going to want to say something. Guy, I will just unmute you a second.
No, completely pressed by accident.
No worries.
No
worries.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you, Guy. Okay, so yeah, we'll wrap up the session there. Really valuable stuff. So let's look at a couple of takeaways we've got from this. So you're going to get a resource pack from us with regards to all of the information which is talked here, copies of the presentation and all that sort of thing will go out to you. Laura's going to be in contact with you individually to see if there's anything which we can do from the Growth Club side to support and to talk through anything else there. And this will also be fed back to Geoff and Sally as well. We won't be expecting any names or anything like that. Everything will be anonymous, or and we won't be looking at any of those kind of details. But if you want that additional sort of support or discussion, it'll be there. Then in the resource pack there will be the support which Geoff's organisation and Sally's team, and also the Swindon teams in Swindon Borough Council can do for all of their support will be there. This is the first of several sessions we have on wellbeing in the workplace, covering a variety of topics. I'll hand over to Laura in a minute to talk through those. We really hope that you have found this useful. Like I said, this has been recorded, so please, when it's available, share it with your colleagues, share it with your team, share it with those people who you think it is going to make an impact with. We also are running a repeat of this session on the 25th.
Yep.
And that's in the afternoon. So again, trying to reach other people. So if you've got colleagues who you think or clients who you think this will be really, really useful for your business or for my colleagues or whatever, please let them know. You can book on it through the Growth Hub events page. But Laura, what are the other subjects that we're going to be covering? Okay, so
our next session will be around obesity and diet, and we'll be running those sessions on the 7th of February and the 22nd of February. And then we will be having a session around MSK, musculoskeletal health and sleep. And that will be March. And again, there'll be 2 sessions. And then in April, we'll have our last session of this program of events. And that session will be around, that's going to be a big one. It's going to be menopause, period dignity, self-harm and suicide. We'll be talking about in that session. Throughout, we will have, like us, brilliant speakers today. We're going to be hearing from people that are working in the area and are able to offer support and signposts. So each one will come with that pragmatic sort of follow-ups as well. And we'll usually have a sort of money and cost of living theme throughout as well. And we'll be aimed around the workplace, employees and employers, and how best to support you.
So thank you, Laura, and thank you, Geoff. Thank you, Sally, and thank you to everyone who attended today. We hope you found this useful, and that there's been lots of takeaways and food for thought for you to consider with your clients and businesses. So again, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you
very much, everyone.
Cheers.